The encounter in the Crimson Storm. The planet Xerxes 9 was a harsh, unforgiving world, known for its violent crimson storms that painted the sky in shades of blood and fire. The jagged obsidian terrain stretched endlessly, broken only by the occasional spire of rock that pierced the heavens like a dagger. It was here, in this desolate landscape, that Elena Voss, a human xenobiologist, found herself stranded. Her small research pod had been battered by the storm, its systems failing one by one until she had no choice but to abandon it and seek shelter. Elena trudged through the howling wind, her boots crunching against the volcanic glass beneath her feet. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the air thick with the scent of sulfur and ozone. She pulled her hood tighter around her face, shielding herself from the stinging rain that felt more like acid than water. In the distance, she spotted the mouth of a cave, its dark entrance offering a sliver of hope. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest as she stumbled inside. The cave was vast, its walls smooth and glistening as if polished by centuries of wind and rain. Elena activated the small flashlight on her wrist, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal strange, bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. She set up her portable shelter near the entrance, careful to keep an eye on the storm outside. As she worked, a faint, melodic hum reached her ears, so soft she almost thought she imagined it. Curiosity piqued, Elena followed the sound deeper into the cave. The hum grew louder, more resonant, until she found herself standing before a sight that took her breath away. A figure lay trapped beneath a fallen boulder, their body glowing faintly in the dim light. It was a woman, but unlike any Elena had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, catching the light in mesmerizing patterns, and her hair flowed around her like strands of starlight. Her eyes, a deep, glowing violet, locked onto Elena's, and in that moment, Elena felt a connection she couldn't explain. "Please," the alien woman whispered, her voice like the chime of distant bells. "Help me." Elena hesitated, her training as a scientist warring with her instincts as a human. She had no idea what this creature was or what she was capable of, but the pain in those violet eyes was undeniable. Swallowing her fear, Elena knelt beside the woman and began to examine the boulder. It was massive, far too heavy for her to lift alone, but she had tools in her pack that might help. "Hold on," Elena said, her voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "I'll get you out of here." The alien woman nodded, her expression a mix of gratitude and something else, something Elena couldn't quite place. As Elena worked to free her, she couldn't help but notice the intricate patterns that adorned the woman's skin, like constellations etched in silver. Her movements were graceful, even in pain, and there was an otherworldly beauty about her that was impossible to ignore. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Elena managed to shift the boulder enough for the woman to pull herself free. She winced as she stood, her leg clearly injured, but she managed a small smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but filled with warmth. "I am Kaylin." "Elena," the human replied, extending a hand. "What are you doing out here? This planet isn't exactly a tourist destination." Kaylin's smile faded, replaced by a look of sorrow. "I was running," she admitted. "From those who would see my kind destroyed." Elena's eyes widened. "Your kind?" "I am Starborn," Kaylin explained, her voice tinged with pride and pain. "We are an ancient race, once revered as the keepers of the stars. But the Galactic Council fears our power, and they have hunted us to near extinction." Elena's mind raced. She had heard rumors of the Starborn, whispers of a race that could manipulate the very fabric of the universe. But she had always dismissed them as myths. Now, standing before one, she realized how little she truly knew about the galaxy. The storm outside showed no signs of abating, and Elena knew they would be stuck in the cave for hours, if not days. She helped Kaylin to her shelter, where they sat in silence for a while, the only sound the howling wind and the occasional rumble of thunder. As the hours passed, the two women began to talk. Kaylin spoke of her people's history, of their connection to the stars and their ability to form soul bonds, a deep, psychic connection that transcended physicality. Elena listened in awe, her scientific mind fascinated by the possibilities. But there was something else, something unspoken, that hung in the air between them. Elena found herself drawn to Kaylin in a way she couldn't explain. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the way Kaylin looked at her, as if she could see straight into her soul. As the night wore on, the tension between them grew, until it was almost palpable. Elena's heart raced as Kaylin reached out, her silver fingers brushing against Elena's cheek. "You are different," Kaylin whispered, her violet eyes searching Elena's. "I can feel it in your soul." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "You see me," Kaylin said, her voice barely audible. "Not as a creature to be studied, but as a person. That is rare." Elena didn't know what to say. She had always prided herself on her objectivity as a scientist, but in that moment, she realized how much she had been missing. There was a connection here, something deeper than logic or reason. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cave, the world seemed to stand still. Elena and Kaylin sat close, their hands intertwined, as they shared stories of their lives. For the first time in years, Elena felt truly alive. But their moment of peace was short-lived. As dawn approached, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Kaylin's eyes widened in fear. "They've found me," she whispered. Elena's heart sank. "Who?" "The Council's enforcers," Kaylin replied, her voice trembling. "They will stop at nothing to capture me." Elena's mind raced. She had no weapons, no way to fight off an entire retrieval team. But she couldn't just leave Kaylin to her fate. "We'll figure something out," Elena said, her voice firm. "Together." Kaylin looked at her, her violet eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something that made Elena's heart skip a beat. "Thank you," Kaylin said softly. "But there is something you should know. The bond we share, it is more than just a connection. It is a promise." Elena frowned. "A promise?" Kaylin hesitated, then placed a hand on her abdomen. "The Starborn can only conceive with those we form a true bond with. And when we do, it creates something extraordinary." Elena's eyes widened as the realization hit her. "You're saying?" Kaylin nodded. "We are bound, Elena. Not just in spirit, but in life." The weight of Kaylin's words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Outside, the hum grew louder, and Elena knew they had no time to waste. "Then we'll face them together," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever comes next." Kaylin smiled, a look of fierce determination in her eyes. "Together." As the first light of dawn broke through the storm, Elena and Kaylin prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The storm outside was nothing compared to the tempest brewing within them, a storm of passion, fear, and hope. And in that moment, Elena knew her life would never be the same. The forbidden bond. The hum outside the cave grew louder, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Elena and Kaylin's feet. Elena's heart pounded as she peered out of the cave entrance, her flashlight cutting through the dim light of dawn. In the distance, she could see the faint glow of approaching ships, their sleek, angular designs unmistakably belonging to the Galactic Council's enforcers. "We need to move," Elena said, turning to Kaylin. "Now." Kaylin nodded, her silver skin flickering with faint pulses of light that mirrored her rising anxiety. She winced as she stood, her injured leg still causing her pain. Elena quickly slung her pack over her shoulder and offered Kaylin her arm for support. Together, they moved deeper into the cave, the bioluminescent fungi on the walls casting an eerie glow around them. "Where does this lead?" Elena asked, her voice low. "I don't know," Kaylin admitted. "But it's our only chance." The cave twisted and turned, its passages narrowing and widening unpredictably. The air grew cooler, and the sound of dripping water echoed around them. Elena's mind raced as she tried to formulate a plan. She had no weapons, no way to defend themselves if the enforcers caught up. All she had was her wits and her determination to protect Kaylin. As they walked, Kaylin's hand tightened around Elena's arm. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. Elena glanced at her, noting the fear in her violet eyes. "What is it?" "The bond we share, it's not just emotional," Kaylin began. "It's psychic. I can feel your thoughts, your emotions. And you can feel mine, if you let yourself." Elena frowned, her scientific mind struggling to process the idea. "You're saying we're connected on a mental level?" Kaylin nodded. "It's how my people form relationships. It's how we reproduce." Elena's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "Wait, are you saying?" "Yes," Kaylin interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "The bond we formed last night, it has already begun to create new life." Elena stopped walking, her mind reeling. "You're pregnant." Kaylin placed a hand on her abdomen, her silver skin glowing faintly. "Not in the way you understand it. Starborn reproduction is different. The bond we share has planted a seed within me, a starborn seed. It will grow, but it needs time." Elena stared at her, a mix of awe and fear swirling in her chest. "This is a lot to take in." "I know," Kaylin said, her voice filled with regret. "And I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. But the bond chose you, Elena. It saw something in you that I couldn't ignore." Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "What does this mean for us?" "It means we're bound together," Kaylin replied. "Not just as partners, but as parents. And it means the council will stop at nothing to destroy what we've created." The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the cave, pulling them both back to the present. Elena's instincts kicked in, and she tightened her grip on Kaylin's arm. "We'll figure this out later. Right now, we need to focus on getting out of here." Kaylin nodded, and they continued moving through the cave. The passages grew narrower, forcing them to squeeze through tight spaces. Elena's flashlight flickered, its battery running low, but she pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. After what felt like hours, they finally emerged into a large cavern, its ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. In the center of the cavern was a pool of water, its surface perfectly still and reflecting the faint light from the fungi on the walls. "This way," Kaylin said, leading Elena toward the pool. "There's an underground river that leads to the surface. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose the enforcers." Elena hesitated, staring at the dark water. "You're sure about this?" Kaylin nodded. "It's our only chance." Taking a deep breath, Elena followed Kaylin into the water. It was cold, sending a shiver down her spine, but she forced herself to keep moving. The pool deepened quickly, and soon they were swimming, the sound of their movements echoing through the cavern. As they swam, Elena felt a strange sensation in her mind, like a gentle tug at her thoughts. She glanced at Kaylin, who was glowing faintly in the darkness. "Is that you?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaylin nodded. "The bond is growing stronger. You'll start to feel it more as time goes on." Elena wasn't sure how she felt about that, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. The sound of voices echoed through the cavern behind them, and she knew the enforcers were closing in. They swam for what felt like an eternity, the cold water sapping their strength. But finally, they reached the other side of the cavern, where the river flowed out into a narrow tunnel. Kaylin pulled herself onto a rocky ledge and helped Elena up after her. "We're close," Kaylin said, her voice filled with relief. "Just a little further." Elena nodded, her body trembling from the cold and exhaustion. But she forced herself to keep going, driven by the need to protect Kaylin and the life growing within her. As they moved through the tunnel, the bond between them grew stronger. Elena could feel Kaylin's emotions now, her fear, her determination, her love. It was overwhelming, but also comforting in a way she couldn't explain. Finally, they emerged into the open air, the crimson storm still raging around them. The landscape was barren, but in the distance, Elena could see the faint outline of her research pod. "We can make it," she said, her voice filled with hope. But before they could take another step, a blinding light filled the sky, and a ship descended from the clouds. Its sleek, angular design was unmistakable. It was a Council Enforcer vessel. Kaylin's eyes widened in fear. "They found us." Elena's heart sank, but she refused to give up. "We're not done yet," she said, gripping Kaylin's hand tightly. "We'll fight them together." Kaylin looked at her, her violet eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something that made Elena's heart skip a beat. "Together," Kaylin whispered. As the Enforcer ship landed, its ramp lowering to reveal a squad of armored soldiers, Elena and Kaylin stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The bond between them pulsed with energy, a testament to their connection and the life they had created together. And in that moment, Elena knew they would do whatever it took to protect it. The chase across the stars. The Enforcer ship loomed before them, its metallic surface gleaming ominously under the crimson sky. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and a squad of armored soldiers emerged, their movements precise and mechanical. Their helmets obscured their faces, but Elena could feel the cold, unyielding determination radiating from them. These were not just soldiers, they were hunters, programmed to retrieve their target at any cost. Kaylin's grip on Elena's hand tightened, her silver skin flickering with pulses of light that mirrored her rising fear. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Not until they have me." Elena's mind raced as she scanned their surroundings. The storm still raged around them, the wind howling like a wounded beast. Her research pod was within sight, but it might as well have been miles away with the Enforcers blocking their path. She had no weapons, no way to fight back, but she couldn't just stand there and let them take Kaylin. "Stay behind me," Elena said, stepping in front of Kaylin. Kaylin's eyes widened. "Elena, no. You can't." "I'm not letting them take you," Elena interrupted, her voice firm. "Not without a fight." The Enforcers advanced, their weapons raised. Elena braced herself, her heart pounding in her chest. But before they could reach her, Kaylin stepped forward, her violet eyes glowing with an intensity that made the air around her crackle with energy. "Enough," Kaylin said, her voice resonating with power. The Enforcers hesitated, their movements faltering. Kaylin raised her hands, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. The obsidian rocks shifted and cracked, forming jagged spikes that shot up from the ground, forcing the Enforcers to retreat. Elena stared at Kaylin in awe. "How did you do that?" Kaylin's breathing was labored, her silver skin dimming slightly. "The bond, it gives me access to your strength, your resilience. But it's draining. We need to go. Now." Elena nodded, and they sprinted toward the research pod. The Enforcers regrouped quickly, their weapons firing bolts of energy that sizzled through the air. Elena ducked and weaved, her adrenaline-fueled reflexes keeping her one step ahead. Kaylin stayed close, her movements fluid and graceful despite her injury. They reached the pod just as the Enforcers closed in. Elena slammed her hand on the access panel, and the hatch opened with a hiss. She shoved Kaylin inside and climbed in after her, sealing the hatch just as a bolt of energy struck the hull. "Hold on!" Elena shouted, strapping herself into the pilot's seat. The pod's engines roared to life, and they shot into the sky, the storm raging around them. The Enforcer ship pursued them, its weapons firing relentlessly. Elena maneuvered the pod with skill born of desperation, dodging and weaving through the crimson clouds. "We need to lose them," Kaylin said, her voice strained. "Working on it," Elena replied, her hands flying over the controls. She activated the pod's cloaking device, a prototype she had been testing before the storm hit. The pod shimmered and disappeared from view, but the enforcers were relentless, their sensors scanning for any trace of them. "They're still on us," Kaylin said, her violet eyes scanning the readouts. Elena gritted her teeth. "Then we'll have to get creative." She steered the pod toward a massive storm cell, its swirling clouds crackling with energy. The enforcer ship followed, its weapons firing blindly into the storm. Elena pushed the pod to its limits, the hull groaning under the strain. "This is insane," Kaylin said, her voice filled with awe. "It's our only shot," Elena replied, her eyes locked on the storm ahead. They plunged into the heart of the storm, the pod shaking violently as lightning struck around them. The enforcer ship hesitated, its sensors overwhelmed by the storm's energy. Elena took advantage of the distraction, steering the pod toward a hidden canyon she had mapped during her initial survey of the planet. The pod emerged from the storm, its cloaking device still active. Elena guided it into the canyon, the narrow walls providing cover from the enforcer's sensors. She landed the pod in a hidden alcove, the engines sputtering as they powered down. For a moment, there was silence. Then Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. Kaylin smiled, her silver skin glowing faintly. "Thanks to you." Elena turned to her, her heart swelling with pride and something else, something deeper. "We're in this together, remember?" Kaylin's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "But we're not safe yet. The Council will send more enforcers. And they won't stop until they have me, and the Starborn seed." Elena's expression hardened. "Then we'll keep running. We'll find a way to protect it." Kaylin reached out, her hand brushing against Elena's cheek. "You're incredible, you know that." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No," Kaylin said, her voice filled with conviction. "You're doing what no one else would. And that's why the bond chose you." Elena felt a surge of emotion, the bond between them pulsing with energy. She leaned in, her lips brushing against Kaylin's in a kiss that was both tender and fierce. It was a promise to fight, to protect, to stay together no matter what. When they finally pulled apart, Kaylin rested her forehead against Elena's. "We need to leave this planet. Find somewhere safe." Elena nodded. "I know a place. A trading outpost on the edge of the galaxy. We can lay low there, figure out our next move." Kaylin smiled. "Then let's go." As the pod's engines roared to life once more, Elena felt a sense of determination she had never known before. They were fugitives now, hunted by the most powerful force in the galaxy. But they had each other, and the bond that connected them. And in that moment, Elena knew they could face anything, together. The trading outpost of Nix Prime was a chaotic sprawl of neon lights, bustling markets, and shadowy alleyways. It was the kind of place where anyone could disappear, for a price. Elena guided the pod into a hidden docking bay on the outskirts of the outpost, her hands steady on the controls despite the exhaustion weighing heavily on her. "We'll lay low here for a while," Elena said, powering down the pod systems. "I know a guy who can help us." Kaylin nodded, her silver skin flickering faintly in the dim light of the pod's interior. "Be careful, Elena. The Council's reach is long, and their agents are everywhere." Elena gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry. I've dealt with my fair share of shady characters. I know how to handle myself." They stepped out of the pod and into the bustling streets of Nix Prime. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the hum of alien languages. Elena kept her hood up, her eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of trouble. Kaylin stayed close, her presence a comforting warmth at Elena's side. They made their way to a seedy cantina tucked away in a quiet corner of the outpost. The sign above the door read, "The Rusty Nebula," and the interior was just as grimy as the name suggested. Elena led Kalen to a booth in the back, where a burly alien with 4 arms and a face like a crumpled piece of leather was nursing a drink. "Zorak," Elena said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Long time no see." Zorak looked up, his beady eyes narrowing as he recognized her. "Elena Voss. I thought you were off playing scientist on some backwater planet." "Change of plans," Elena replied, her tone casual. "I need your help." Zorak's gaze shifted to Kalen, and his expression darkened. "You've got a starborn with you. Do you have any idea how much trouble that is?" Elena leaned forward, her voice low. "I know the risks. But I also know you're the best smuggler in the galaxy. If anyone can get us off the Council's radar, it's you." Zorak sighed, running a hand over his wrinkled face. "You're asking for a lot, Elena. The Council doesn't take kindly to people who help their fugitives." "Name your price," Elena said, her voice firm. Zorak studied her for a moment, then leaned back in his seat. "I'll help you. But it's going to cost you. And not just credits." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" Zorak's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "I want the starborn seed." Kalen stiffened beside Elena, her violet eyes flashing with anger. "The seed is not for bargaining." Zorak shrugged. "Then you're on your own. The Council's enforcers are already swarming this place. You won't last the night without my help." Elena placed a hand on Kalen's arm, calming her. "We don't have a choice," she said softly. "We need him." Kalen's expression was pained, but she nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if you betray us, Zorak, you'll regret it." Zorak chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. "I don't doubt it. Now, let's get moving. We don't have much time." They followed Zorak through a maze of back alleys and hidden passages, eventually arriving at a nondescript building on the edge of the outpost. Inside was a small, well-equipped ship, its sleek design a stark contrast to the grimy exterior. "This is the Shadow Star," Zorak said, gesturing to the ship. "Fastest ship in the galaxy. It'll get you where you need to go." Elena raised an eyebrow. "And where exactly is that?" Zorak grinned, revealing a row of sharp, yellow teeth. "There's a place called Elysium. It's a hidden colony, off the Council's maps. If you want to disappear, that's where you need to go." Kalen's eyes widened. "Elysium? I've heard of it. It's said to be a sanctuary for those who defy the Council." Zorak nodded. "Exactly. But getting there won't be easy. The route is dangerous, and the Council's patrols are thick. You'll need to be careful." Elena glanced at Kalen, who gave her a small nod. "We'll take the risk." Zorak handed Elena a data chip. "The coordinates are on there. Good luck, Elena. You're going to need it." As Zorak disappeared into the shadows, Elena and Kalen boarded the Shadow Star. The ship's interior was sleek and modern, a far cry from the cramped research pod they had been using. Elena took the pilot's seat, her hands moving confidently over the controls. "Ready?" she asked, glancing at Kalen. Kalen smiled, her violet eyes filled with determination. "Ready." The Shadow Star lifted off, its engines humming with power. As they soared into the stars, Elena felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. They were fugitives, hunted by the most powerful force in the galaxy, but they had each other, and the bond that connected them. As the ship entered hyperspace, Kalen placed a hand on her abdomen, her silver skin glowing faintly. "The seed is growing," she said softly. "I can feel it." Elena reached over, taking Kalen's hand in hers. "We'll protect it. No matter what." Kalen's smile was filled with warmth and gratitude. "I know we will." As the stars streaked past the view screen, Elena and Kalen sat together, their bond pulsing with energy. They were on the run, their future uncertain, but they had each other, and the promise of a new life. And in that moment, Elena knew they could face anything, together. Sanctuary in the stars. The shadow star cut through the void of space, its sleek hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Elena sat in the pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the coordinates Zorak had provided. The journey to Elysium was fraught with danger, but it was their only hope. Beside her, Kaelin rested a hand on her abdomen, her silver skin glowing faintly as she felt the starborn seed growing within her. "How are you holding up?" Elena asked, glancing at Kaelin. Kaelin smiled, though her violet eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "I'm fine. The bond, it gives me strength. But I can feel the seed growing stronger. It won't be long now." Elena reached over, taking Kaelin's hand in hers. "We'll get to Elysium. We'll find a safe place for you, for both of you." Kaelin's smile softened, her gratitude palpable through the bond. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Elena." Before Elena could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared, snapping them both to attention. The view screen lit up with a cluster of red dots, Council patrol ships, blocking their path. "They found us," Elena muttered, her hands flying over the controls. "Hold on." She veered the shadow star sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts. The patrol ships pursued them relentlessly, their weapons firing in rapid succession. Elena maneuvered the ship with skill born of desperation, weaving through asteroid fields and dodging plasma bolts. "We can't outrun them forever," Kaelin said, her voice tense. "We don't have to," Elena replied, her eyes scanning the readouts. "There's a nebula nearby. If we can lose them in there, we might have a chance." Kaelin nodded, her violet eyes glowing with determination. "Do it." Elena pushed the shadow star to its limits, the engines roaring as they entered the nebula. The swirling clouds of gas and dust obscured their path, but Elena relied on instinct and the ship's advanced sensors to guide them. The patrol ships hesitated at the edge of the nebula, their sensors overwhelmed by the interference. "They're falling back," Kaelin said, relief evident in her voice. "For now," Elena replied, her tone grim. "But they'll regroup. We need to get to Elysium fast." The shadow star emerged from the nebula, its hull scorched but intact. Elena adjusted their course, the coordinates for Elysium now within reach. As they approached the hidden colony, a sense of awe washed over them. Elysium was a marvel, a massive space station nestled within a cluster of asteroids, its surface covered in lush gardens and gleaming spires. It was a sanctuary, a place where those who defied the Council could find refuge. "It's beautiful," Kaelin whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Elena nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "We're almost there." As they approached the station, a transmission came through. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose." Elena activated the comms. "This is Elena Voss. We're seeking sanctuary." There was a pause, then the voice replied, "Welcome to Elysium, Elena Voss. You are cleared for docking." The shadow star glided into the docking bay, its engines humming softly as it came to rest. Elena and Kaelin stepped out of the ship, their eyes taking in the bustling activity of the station. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved about, their faces filled with a sense of freedom and purpose. A tall, humanoid figure approached them, his skin a deep blue and his eyes a piercing gold. "I am Talon, the overseer of Elysium. Zorak sent word of your arrival." Elena nodded. "We're grateful for your help." Talon's gaze shifted to Kaelin, his expression softening. "And you must be the Starborn. Welcome. You are safe here." Kaelin's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Thank you." Talon led them through the station, explaining its history and purpose. Elysium was more than just a refuge, it was a beacon of hope for those who dared to defy the Council. As they walked, Elena felt a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. They were shown to a small, comfortable quarters overlooking one of the station's gardens. Kaylin sat on the edge of the bed, her hand resting on her abdomen. "We made it," she said softly. Elena sat beside her, taking her hand. "We did. And now we can start over." Kaylin's smile was filled with warmth and gratitude. Together. As the stars twinkled outside the window, Elena and Kaylin sat together, their bond pulsing with energy. They had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger for it. And in that moment, they knew they could face anything, together.